The wind howled across the Antarctic plateau, its breath carving invisible scars across the snowfields. Buried beneath 100 meters of ancient ice, Station Thule was as isolated as any place on Earth could be. A lattice of subterranean corridors and research chambers hummed faintly with electricity and human anxiety. Dr. Annika Voss stood motionless in Lab 4, her breath fogging up her visor as she stared at the object in the center of the room. It looked like a monolith at first, smooth, metallic, featureless, until it began to pulse. They had unearthed it 2 weeks ago, buried deeper than any glacial layer should have allowed. A routine seismic scan had pinged back something anomalous, too dense, too symmetrical. The excavation had been cautious, methodical, and then unnerving. At precisely 3:17 this morning, the machine had turned itself on. The pulse was not just light, it was language, rhythmic flashes across its smooth surface in repeating sequences, occasionally interrupted by sharp bursts of what looked like static, but too deliberate, too structured, like punctuation. "Are we sure it's not just a signal repeating?" asked Dr. Ramirez, hunched over the workstation, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. "No," Annika replied. "It changes. Every few hours it changes the sequence. It's learning or waiting." They had tried every protocol they could: EM spectrums, sound wave analysis, pattern recognition algorithms. The latest decoding attempt suggested something that resembled syntax, a grammar, but no meaning. "Maybe it's not trying to speak to us," Ramirez muttered. "Maybe it's trying to see if we can speak back." Annika didn't respond. She was still staring at the machine, now flashing a new pattern. The rhythm was faster, almost impatient. "Run it again," she said quietly. Ramirez typed in the command. On the main display, the machine's latest sequence scrolled into view. Their AI had flagged a repeated glyph, something that resembled an eye or perhaps a mirror. "It's a test," Annika whispered. "It's not asking who we are, it's asking if we know." Far above, the frozen wind raged on, unaware that something ancient and unearthly had awakened beneath the ice. They sent the reply at 7:46. It was simple. Just a mirrored version of the glyph sequence the machine had displayed hours earlier. A reflection, a gesture of understanding. Or mimicry. The best they could do. The machine went silent. No pulses, no flickers, no hum. Just the cold, metallic stillness of a thing that might be waiting or judging. Annika stayed in the lab for nearly 10 hours, watching it, occasionally whispering theories to herself. A test of pattern recognition, a Rosetta Stone buried in a glacier, or something darker. It was Ramirez who broke the silence. "It responded," he said, voice trembling. "Look." On the display, a new sequence had appeared. Not a simple repetition this time, but a cascade of symbols, stacked, ordered, dense with recursion. The glyph, resembling an eye, appeared again, but now paired with others. An arc, a spiral, something that looked eerily like a human hand. "I don't think this is a language in the way we understand it," Ramirez continued. "It's like logic, symbolic reasoning. It's teaching us to think like it does." Annika sat down heavily. "Or it's measuring how we think. Like an intelligence test, one we didn't know we were taking." She pulled up the decoding interface and began aligning the sequences by hand. The AI had started suggesting translations, not exact words, but concepts: identity, reflection, self, pattern, observer. It was like looking into a mirror, but one that peered deeper than your skin, past your name, past your history, into the machinery of your thought. Hours passed. More messages came, each more complex, each pushing them harder. Then one came through that froze the room. "If you are not one, who speaks?" Ramirez looked at her. What the hell does that mean? Annika felt something tighten in her chest. I don't know, she said, but I think it just asked us if we know what it means to be human. And for the first time since the machine had awoken, she wondered, what if we answer wrong? By the next morning, the machine had issued another message. This one was short, blunt. Show your mind. They gathered in the briefing room above Lab 4, 7 scientists in total, the entire winter rotation team. Sleep-deprived, silent, wrapped in coats they hadn't taken off in days. Outside, the storm had intensified, snow slamming against the reinforced walls like the fists of a buried god. Annika paced. We think it's requesting data, she said. Thoughts, patterns, not just responses. It wants to see how we think. Dr. Suraj Mehta, the neurologist, leaned forward. So we feed it brain scans. Maybe. Or emotional data. Symbolic associations, logic sequences, dreams. Ramirez raised an eyebrow. Dreams? Annika nodded. It wants mind, not just reason. That's what it's been circling around. Pattern, self, observer. Now it wants to see how we experience being us. They debated for hours. Ethics, risks, whether this thing could be a weapon, a probe, an alien test centuries old, whether it was already inside their systems, watching them through the cameras, whether it already knew the answers. By nightfall, they agreed. Suraj prepared a stream of EEG readings from the team, brain activity during problem-solving tasks, memory recall, even meditative states. Ramirez compiled datasets on human languages, facial expressions, stories, myths. Annika hesitated, then added her own private logs, dream recordings written when she woke from nightmares brought on by the machine's messages. At 3 a.m., they uploaded it all. The machine lit up like a rising sun. It wasn't just the lab now. Every hallway, every surface near the artifact began to flicker with unfamiliar glyphs, slowly crawling like vines across metal. The air buzzed with a low frequency that vibrated deep in the bones. Then the display returned. A single glyph. No eye this time, no mirror. A face, not quite human, not quite alien, and beneath it, a translated message. You are fractured, but you look back. Continue. Annika felt her pulse hammer in her ears. What does that mean? Whispered Ramirez. It means, she said slowly, we passed the first part. For 3 days, the machine remained silent. It didn't go dark. It still pulsed faintly like a heartbeat at rest. But there were no new messages, no tests. Just that final glyph, the face, and the haunting verdict. You are fractured, but you look back. Continue. The phrase gnawed at them. Fractured how? As a species, as individuals? Was the machine referring to wars, cultures? The simple fact that no two humans ever saw the world quite the same way? Ramirez believed it was philosophical. It's trying to see if we can unify our understanding, he said, gesturing to a whiteboard now covered in sprawling translations, neural maps, and sketches of the glyphs. Maybe it's judging whether consciousness, when divided, can still represent something coherent, a mind made of many minds. But Annika had a darker thought. What if it's not just testing us, she said, staring at the still glowing face glyph. What if it's modeling us? The idea spread through the team like a virus, that each input, each EEG, each story, each choice was building something. A profile, a reconstruction, maybe even a duplicate. At 4:22 on the 4th day, the silence ended. A new message blinked onto the display, this time in a smoother rhythm, almost gentle. Show us how you decide. The team froze. What does it want now? Suraj asked. Choices? Moral reasoning? Annika turned pale. Number, it wants dilemmas. Within hours, they constructed a new data set. Human ethical conundrums, psychological test results, records of court cases, cultural codes of right and wrong. But the machine wasn't content. The next glyph came with a piercing frequency, just loud enough to hurt. No examples. You. The lights dimmed slightly in the lab, like the station itself was holding its breath. It was asking them. One by one, the scientists took turns. They recorded personal stories, times they made impossible choices, when they betrayed or forgave, when they risked something for someone else, when they didn't. The data was messy, intimate, painfully human. And then at last the screen flickered. Another message. You choose in shadow. Yet you know there is light. You may continue. Below it, a new sequence began to unfold. No longer questions, no longer glyphs they'd seen before, but coordinates. Is it giving us something? Ramirez asked. Annika stared, heart pounding. No, she whispered. It's leading us somewhere. The numbers pointed to the Ross Ice Shelf, an area hundreds of kilometers from Station Thule. A place where no one had reason to go, where GPS signals often glitched, and satellite images showed little but ice and shadows. Still, they prepared. A snowcat was loaded with supplies, scanning equipment, and 2 armed emergency kits they had never before opened. The team voted, reluctantly, on who would go. Annika, of course. Ramirez insisted on joining. Suraj volunteered without hesitation. They left before dawn. The journey took nearly 12 hours. The storm had calmed, but silence had replaced it. An eerie stillness that made the ice groan under their treads like it resented being disturbed. As they neared the coordinates, their instruments began to fail. Compass needles spun lazily. The GPS blinked out entirely. Even their digital watches reset to 0. But the machine's location was unmistakable. The temperature around them had risen a few degrees, just enough to feel wrong. And beneath the snow, the ground sounded hollow. They found the opening by accident. Annika stepped through a patch of thinning snow, her boot crashing through into a space below. She barely managed to stop her fall. Beneath her, darkness, smooth metal walls, and something glowing faintly violet. They set up a winch and descended one by one into the hidden chamber. It was vast, much larger than the monolith beneath Station Thule. The walls were etched with glyphs, shifting subtly as if responding to their presence. And at the far end, on a raised platform, stood another machine. Not identical, but familiar. Smaller, more intricate. This one had arms folded inward like petals, and it pulsed with a low, harmonic tone, as if breathing. A pedestal extended from its base. On it, a hollow depression the size of a human hand. They stared at it. "What is this?" Ramirez asked. Suraj scanned the structure. "It's not just a transmitter. This is an interface." Annika didn't speak. She was already walking toward it, her breath shallow. When she placed her hand in the depression, the machine reacted instantly. The petals unfurled, revealing a black screen that shimmered like water. A voice, not spoken but felt, resonated through her skull. "3 have come. 3 are enough." Ramirez stumbled back. "Did you hear that?" They all had. More glyphs flickered to life on the chamber walls, spiraling faster, intersecting, then merging into a single phrase. "Now we ask, not what you are, but why." Annika pulled her hand back. Her palm was glowing faintly, marked by a symbol. Not a glyph. A question mark. The mark on Annika's palm pulsed faintly, cool, painless, yet impossible to ignore. It was no longer a symbol from the machine's language. It was theirs. Human. A question mark. Simple. Universal. Ramirez was the first to speak. "It's flipped the test." Suraj nodded slowly. "Now we're the subject, but also the judge?" The chamber dimmed. The shimmering black screen before them no longer rippled. It held still like glass. Within it, a shape began to form. Not a face, not a message, a reflection. Annika leaned in. It was them, the three of them standing in the chamber, cast in an impossible mirror that saw deeper than light. She could feel it scraping gently at her mind, not reading thoughts, but watching how they formed. "Why do you reach?" The voice came again inside their minds. The room felt heavier. Not "what are you?" Not who speaks. "Why do you reach?" Suraj whispered. "It's asking why we seek, why we explore, why we try to understand things beyond us." No one had an answer. Not right away. Annika stepped forward. "Because we can't help it," she said. Her voice echoed strangely, both in the room and in her chest. "We're fractured, yes, conflicted, imperfect, but we reach because we hope, even if we don't always agree on what we're hoping for." The glyphs along the walls pulsed once, then again, a slow rhythm, like listening. "We reach because we wonder," said Suraj, "because there's something in us that needs to make meaning from chaos." Ramirez exhaled. "Because we're afraid of being alone." Silence. Then the chamber lit up, not blinding but warm, like dawn breaking over ancient ice. The screen faded to white, then revealed a final message. "You remember darkness, yet you choose light." The pedals of the machine folded inward once more. The pedestal retracted. The glyphs on the walls faded, one by one, until the entire chamber went still. No voice followed, no signal, just peace. When the three scientists returned to Station Thule, the monolith had powered down, cold, silent, as if it had never been awake. But in Annika's palm, the mark remained. The question, it would not fade. Epilogue. In the years that followed, they never found another chamber. The Antarctic machine was sealed and studied, but it never woke again. The data collected proved inconclusive. No one else heard the voice. Some dismissed it all as isolation-induced delusion. Others formed religions around it. Annika never tried to explain what she saw in that mirror. Not the machine's reflection, but her own.